3. The 1960s. Escalation and proxy wars. The Cold War intensified with major international crises, confrontations, and the expansion of the ideological conflict. Cuban Revolution, 1959. Fidel Castro's communist revolution in Cuba alarmed the U.S. and led to a direct confrontation with the USSR. Bay of Pigs invasion, 1961. A failed U.S.-backed attempt by Cuban exiles to overthrow Castro, which led to further tension between the U.S. and the USSR. Berlin Wall, 1961. The East German government, backed by the Soviet Union, constructed the Berlin Wall to prevent East Germans from fleeing to the West. The wall became a symbol of the Cold War division. Cuban Missile Crisis, 1962. Perhaps the closest the Cold War came to full-scale nuclear conflict. The Soviet Union secretly placed nuclear missiles in Cuba, leading to a U.S. naval blockade. After tense negotiations, the USSR agreed to remove the missiles in exchange for a U.S. pledge not to invade Cuba and the secret removal of U.S. missiles from Turkey. Vietnam War, 1955 to 1975. A proxy conflict in which the Communist North, supported by the USSR and China, fought against the U.S.-backed South. The war ended with the fall of Saigon and the unification of Vietnam under Communist rule in 1975. 4. Détente, 1970s. The late 1960s and early 1970s saw a thawing of tensions, known as détente, which was marked by diplomatic efforts to reduce the risk of nuclear war. Strategic Arms Limitation Talks, SALT-I, 1972. These talks between the U.S. and USSR led to agreements on limiting the number of nuclear missiles each country could possess. Helsinki Accords, 1975. Signed by 35 nations, these accords recognized European borders and promoted human rights, signaling a period of relative cooperation. However, détente was undermined by ongoing conflicts and the resurgence of Cold War hostilities. Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, 1979. The USSR intervened in Afghanistan to prop up a communist government, leading to a U.S.-backed Mujahideen insurgency. The U.S. also boycotted the 1980 Moscow Olympics in protest. 5. The 1980s. Renewed tensions and the end of the Cold War. The final decade of the Cold War saw both increased confrontation and eventual cooperation. Ronald Reagan's presidency, 1981 to 1989. Reagan took a hardline stance against the USSR, calling it the evil empire. He escalated the arms race with initiatives like the Strategic Defense Initiative, SDI, a missile defense system. Second Cold War. The early 1980s saw increased military spending and new confrontations, such as the U.S. invasion of Grenada, 1983, and the Soviet Union's military buildup. Mikhail Gorbachev's reforms, 1985 to 1991. Gorbachev became the leader of the Soviet Union and introduced reforms like glasnost, openness, and perestroika, restructuring, in an effort to revitalize the Soviet system and ease tensions. Gorbachev's willingness to engage with the West played a key role in the Cold War's end. Fall of the Berlin Wall, 1989. A symbolic end to the division of Europe. East Germans, under pressure from Gorbachev's reforms, opened the Berlin Wall, leading to the reunification of Germany. Collapse of the Soviet Union, 1991. Economic troubles, national independence movements, and Gorbachev's reforms led to the disintegration of the USSR. On December 25, 1991, the Soviet Union officially dissolved, marking the end of the Cold War. Legacy of the Cold War. The Cold War left lasting political, economic, and military legacies. The U.S. emerged as the world's dominant superpower, and the collapse of the Soviet Union led to the spread of democracy and capitalism in Eastern Europe. NATO expanded eastward, while Russia and its neighbors faced economic turmoil. The Cold War also set the stage for modern conflicts and the complex international relationships we see today.
Key themes.
Ideological conflict, democracy versus totalitarianism, capitalism versus communism. Nuclear arms race, the threat of mutually assured destruction, non-proliferation, and disarmament talks. Proxy wars. The Cold War was fought in other countries such as Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, and Latin America. Technological rivalry. Space exploration, Sputnik, Apollo, and technological development were significant battlegrounds. Cultural influence. Both the US and USSR used cultural diplomacy, movies, music, sports, to spread their ideologies. The Cold War deeply shaped the geopolitical landscape of the 20th century, and its echoes can still be seen in global politics today.